I was standing in the middle of my empty apartment, holding a shredded acceptance letter to the nursing program I had worked 3 years to get into, while my boyfriend of 4 years stood over me with a smirk, telling me that if I loved him, I'd be happy to stay home and be his everything, instead of wasting my time in a classroom. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing my education. I was losing my identity to a man who had slowly turned my life into a prison, and I had to decide right then if I was going to be a victim, or if I was going to burn his entire world down to get my freedom back. Was I wrong for what I did to him after he destroyed my future? Or would you have gone even further to protect your soul from a monster like that? Please, listen to the whole story and tell me if I crossed the line, because even now, I wake up wondering if the revenge I took was too much, or if it was the only way I could ever truly be free. To understand how I ended up on the floor of that apartment with my dreams in pieces, you have to understand who Liam was when I first met him. He wasn't the monster he became. At least, he didn't show that side of himself. When we met during my sophomore year of college, he was charming, attentive, and seemingly my biggest supporter. I was a straight-A student, obsessed with becoming a pediatric nurse, and he would sit with me in the library for hours, bringing me coffee and telling me how proud he was of my ambition. He would talk about our future together, how I'd be this amazing nurse and he'd be the tech mogul supporting me. But looking back, the red flags were there, disguised as care. It started with small comments about my male classmates, wondering why I needed to be in study groups with them. He'd say things like, "Why is Mark texting you about biology at 9 p.m.? Doesn't he have a girlfriend?" It seemed like protective love at first, but it was the beginning of a slow poison. Then it moved to my schedule. He'd get upset if I had a late lab session because it meant we couldn't have dinner together. He started making me feel guilty for being busy, framing my success as a threat to our quality time. By the time we moved in together in my junior year, the trap was already closing. He convinced me to let him handle the finances since he had a stable job in tech, and slowly, I found myself asking permission for things I used to do without a second thought. I remember the first time I had to ask for $20 to buy a textbook. He made me explain for an hour why I couldn't just use an older edition or borrow it. He made me feel like I was being irresponsible with our money, even though I was working a part-time job at the campus cafe and depositing every cent into his account. The manipulation deepened into a terrifying psychological game that I didn't even realize I was playing until I was already losing. He started using the silent treatment as a weapon. If I went to a study group that he hadn't explicitly approved, he wouldn't speak to me for 3 days. He would walk through the apartment as if I were a ghost, making his own dinner and eating it in front of me without saying a word. This created a desperate need in me to fix things, to apologize for things I hadn't even done wrong, just to hear the sound of his voice again. This is how he broke my spirit. By making his approval the only thing that mattered in my life. He would also subtly insult my intelligence. He'd say things like, "It's so cute how hard you have to study for anatomy, Sarah. For me, things just click. I guess some people are just built for the heavy lifting and others are built to look pretty." He was slowly planting the seed in my mind that I wasn't actually smart enough for the medical field, that I was just struggling through it out of sheer stubbornness. He wanted me to believe that without him to guide me and handle the real-world stuff, I would fail miserably. He began to isolate me from my family too. He'd tell me my mother had made a snide comment about my weight behind my back, or that my father didn't think I'd actually finish my degree. None of it was true, but he said it with such pity for me that I believed him. I stopped calling them. I stopped seeing my cousins. I became a satellite orbiting the planet of Liam, and he was more than happy to let me burn up in his atmosphere. As the months went on, the isolation became more calculated. He started picking fights with my best friend, Sarah, telling me that she was jealous of our relationship, and that she was trying to poison my mind against him. He would mimic her voice, make fun of her career choices, and eventually, he made it so uncomfortable for her to visit that she just stopped coming over. I felt so alone, but he was always there to tell me that he was the only one who truly cared about me. He'd accidentally delete my alarms on the mornings of big exams, claiming he thought I needed the sleep because I looked stressed. When I would panic and cry, he'd be right there to hold me, whispering that school was too much for me and that I didn't need the stress. It was a constant cycle of him breaking me down, and then positioning himself as the only one who could put me back together. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. If I talked about a clinical rotation with too much excitement, he'd go silent for days, giving me the cold shoulder until I apologized for something I hadn't even done. If I got a high grade, he'd find a way to criticize my appearance or my cooking to bring me back down to earth. I was becoming a ghost of the person I used to be. My parents noticed I was distant, but every time they called, Liam was right there, listening to every word, so I told them everything was fine. I told myself that this was just what adult relationships looked like, that there was sacrifice involved. But I didn't realize I was the only one sacrificing everything while he was gaining total control. The psychological warfare he waged was subtle but devastating. He started telling me that my memory was failing. I would leave my car keys on the counter, and he would hide them in the freezer, then watch me search for an hour before finding them and telling me he was worried about my mental health. Maybe the stress of nursing school is causing early-onset dementia, Sarah, he'd say with a look of fake concern. He was building a case against my sanity, so that when he finally pulled the rug out from under me, no one would believe my side of the story. I started keeping a secret journal, hidden inside an old anatomy textbook, just to verify my own reality. I'd write down where I put things, what we fought about, and what he said. Reading those entries back made me realize how much he was gaslighting me. I saw a pattern of him purposely creating chaos whenever I was close to a breakthrough in my studies. If I had a major presentation, he'd forget to pay the electric bill, and the lights would go out while I was trying to finish my slides. If I had a final exam, he'd claim he was having a medical emergency and make me stay home to take care of him, only to feel better the second the exam window closed. He wasn't just a toxic boyfriend. He was a predator who viewed my intelligence as a challenge to be conquered. He wanted a doll, not a partner. He wanted someone who would reflect his greatness back at him without ever casting a shadow of her own. He even started controlling what I wore, telling me that future nurses should dress more modestly, which really just meant he didn't want anyone else looking at me. He was erasing me, one layer at a time. I remember one specific night vividly. I was studying for my pharmacology final, and I was exhausted. I had been up for 48 hours, fueled by caffeine and sheer willpower. Liam came into the room with a glass of wine and told me I needed to relax. I told him I couldn't, that this exam was 30% of my grade. He laughed, a cold, dismissive sound, and said, "Why do you care so much about a job where you'll just be cleaning up after doctors? You're better than that, Sarah. You're meant to be a wife, not a servant." That was the first time I saw the true depth of his contempt for my career. He didn't just want me to quit for us. He genuinely looked down on the profession I loved. It made me realize that his support, in the beginning, was just a bait and switch. He had lured me in by pretending to love my ambition, only to use that same ambition as a way to punish me later. He wanted to see me fail so he could be the one to rescue me from my own inadequacy. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I sat there, looking at my notes, and for a second, I actually wondered if he was right. That's how deep the gaslighting goes. You start to believe the person who is hurting you is the only one who knows the truth about you. The real shift happened when I got the news that I had been accepted into one of the most prestigious clinical rotations in the state. It was a dream come true, a placement at a top-tier children's hospital that almost guaranteed a job after graduation. But when I told Liam, he didn't cheer. He went quiet, his face darkening in a way that made my stomach flip. He told me the commute would be too long, that the stress would change me, and that we didn't need the extra money anyway because he was doing so well. When I insisted, the emotional manipulation turned into outright sabotage. He would forget to wake me up for exams, or he'd start a massive, screaming fight at 2 a.m. the night before a big clinical, so I'd go in exhausted and crying. One night he even lost my car keys when I had a 6 a.m. shift, and when I finally found them in his gym bag 3 days later, he told me I was just being forgetful and hysterical. I was drained, isolated from my friends because he told me they were bad influences, who didn't understand our relationship, and I was becoming a shell of myself. The breaking point came when I found out he had been intercepting my mail. I had been waiting for my final enrollment confirmation for my last year of school, And when it never arrived, I called the registrar. They told me the paperwork had been signed and returned, stating that I was withdrawing for personal reasons. I was hysterical. I ran home to find Liam sitting on the couch, my original acceptance letter torn into tiny pieces on the coffee table. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm doing this for us, Sarah. You're too fragile for that world. You belong here with me." I felt a coldness wash over me that I had never felt before. It wasn't just sadness. It was a quiet, deadly rage. Looking at those shredded pieces of paper, I realized that I wasn't a partner to him. I was a possession. He didn't love me. He loved the control he had over me. He had taken my autonomy, my money, my friends, and now my future. I realized that as long as I was with him, I would never have a life. But I couldn't just leave. He had my name on the lease, he controlled the bank accounts, and he had spent months gaslighting my family into thinking I was having a mental breakdown. If I just walked out, he'd find a way to drag me back or ruin me further. He had even installed security cameras in the apartment that I knew were just there to track my movements. He told me they were for our safety, but I knew he was watching the live feed from his office. He wanted to make sure I wasn't making any secret phone calls or trying to contact my old life. So I played the part. I spent 3 days pretending he had won. I cried, I apologized, and I told him he was right, that I wanted to be a homemaker and support him. I watched the tension leave his shoulders. He became the charming Liam again, buying me flowers and telling me how much better our lives would be now that I wasn't distracted by school. He was so smug, so high on his own power, that he didn't notice me taking notes. I started acting like the perfect, brainless housewife he wanted. I cooked 3-course meals, I ironed his shirts, and I never mentioned nursing school again. But inside, I was a spy in my own home. I started looking into his tech job more closely. Since he did everything from home, I had access to his laptop when he showered. I started staying up late, pretending to watch TV while actually monitoring his keystrokes. I discovered he wasn't just a developer. He was embezzling small amounts of money from his company's client accounts for months to fund our lifestyle and keep me dependent. He was also talking to other women online, bragging about how he had tamed his ambitious girlfriend and how easy it was to manipulate someone who thought they were smart. He had folders of spreadsheets showing exactly how he was skimming off the top of his firm's contracts. He thought he was a genius, but he was just a common thief with an ego too big for his own good. He was moving money into a secret offshore account, planning his own exit strategy, while making sure I was stuck in the mud. I also found out he had been using my social security number to open credit cards in my name, racking up debt that I didn't even know existed. He was literally building his empire on my ruins. Every night I had to lie next to him, feeling my skin crawl as he touched me, knowing that he was the person who had set fire to everything I loved. I had to endure his lectures about how lucky I was to have a man who could provide for me while I was secretly downloading his bank statements onto a hidden thumb drive. I spent hours in the bathroom, the only place without a camera, documenting the dates and times of his illegal transactions. I was building a digital guillotine, and he was the one who had sharpened the blade for me. I even found emails where he was mocking my parents, calling them clueless hicks for believing his lies about my mental health. That was the final nail in the coffin. I wasn't just doing this for my career anymore. I was doing it for my dignity. So that's the situation I was in. I was trapped with a man who stole my future, lied to my face, and was breaking the law right under my nose while trying to ruin my credit and my reputation. I was living in a house of mirrors where every exit was blocked. I had a choice. I could leave quietly and let him win, or I could make sure he never did this to another woman again. I knew that if I just left, he'd move on to the next girl and do the exact same thing. I thought about all the other girls out there who might fall for his charming act and end up exactly where I was, broken and hopeless. I had to be the one to stop him. I had to be the storm that he didn't see coming. Before I tell you how I executed my plan and what happened to him, I want you to pause and comment below. If someone stole your entire career and education, and you found out they were also destroying your financial future behind your back, would you just walk away? Or would you seek justice? What would you have done in my shoes? Is it ever okay to stay with someone just to gather evidence against them? Or is that taking things too far? Do you think my plan to destroy his life was justified by what he did to mine? I really want to know if you think I was justified in what comes next, because what I did was calculated, it was cold, and it changed both of our lives forever. Once I had the proof of his embezzlement and the identity theft, I didn't go to the police right away. I wanted it to be public. I wanted him to lose the one thing he valued more than me: his reputation. He obsessed over his image. He wanted everyone to think he was a self-made, successful, high-powered executive. I decided that the bigger the pedestal he built for himself, the harder he would fall. I waited for his company's annual family gala, a big event where he was expected to receive a promotion to senior director. For 2 weeks, I was the perfect, submissive girlfriend. I bought a beautiful dress with the little bit of cash I had managed to skim back from the groceries. I smiled at his jokes, and I made him feel like a king. I even helped him practice his acceptance speech for the promotion, nodding along as he talked about his hard work and dedication. It was sickening to watch him gloat about his success, knowing it was built on stolen money and my broken dreams. On the night of the gala, while he was in the other room getting ready, I sent an anonymous email to his CEO, the CFO, and the entire board of directors containing every single spreadsheet, screenshot of his theft, and the evidence of the fraudulent accounts he'd opened in my name. I also included a link to a cloud folder containing the audio recordings I'd made of him admitting to tearing up my school papers and gaslighting me. I even included a video of him hiding my car keys in the freezer. I timed the email to be delivered at 8 p.m., right as the dinner service began. Then, I went to our shared safe, the one he thought I didn't have the code to, and took the $5,000 in emergency cash he'd been hiding, along with my passport and my birth certificate. I packed a bag I'd hidden in the trunk of a friend's car. The same friend, Sarah, that I had secretly reconnected with at the library while pretending to go for a walk. At the gala, I stood by his side, looking like the perfect trophy. I wore a smile that was sharp as a razor, though he was too blinded by his own ego to see it. I watched Liam's face go from arrogant to ghostly pale as he saw the CEO's phone light up, followed by the CFO's. I saw the confusion on their faces turn into hard, cold anger as they looked at their screens. They weren't just reading about a thief. They were seeing the evidence of how he had mocked them in his private chats, calling them dinosaurs and easy targets. The CEO took the stage, but he didn't call Liam up for a promotion. Instead, he called for security. The room went silent as 2 large men approached our table. Liam tried to stand up, his voice trembling as he asked what was going on. I didn't move. I just sat there, sipping my water, watching the man who tried to ruin my life finally crumble. The look of pure, unadulterated terror in his eyes was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Before the first hand touched Liam's shoulder, I leaned in and whispered, "I'm not too fragile for this world, Liam, but I think you're going to find prison very difficult. Oh, and by the way, I took the cash and the thumb drive. Your parents already know everything too." I walked out of that ballroom without looking back, hearing the gasps of his colleagues and the sound of his voice cracking as he tried to lie his way out of it one last time. I got into Sarah's car, and for the first time in 4 years I breathed. We drove straight to the police station where I filed a formal report for identity theft and domestic harassment. I handed over the secondary thumb drive I had prepared. I didn't just want him fired, I wanted him behind bars. The aftermath was chaotic and glorious. Liam was arrested that night. Because the evidence was so clear and the amount was significant, nearly $80,000 over 2 years, he couldn't wiggle out of it. His perfect reputation was incinerated in a single night. During the discovery process for his trial, it came out that he had done this to a previous girlfriend in another state, which helped my case when I sued him for the emotional distress and the cost of the tuition I'd lost due to his interference. I moved 3 cities away, changed my number, and lived on Sarah's couch while I rebuilt. I went to the university and spoke to the dean of nursing personally. I showed her the police reports, the evidence of the forgery, and the shredded letter. They were horrified. The university board met and decided to not only reinstate me but also granted me a small scholarship for overcoming extreme hardship. It wasn't an easy path. I had to retake several clinical hours and work 2 jobs to pay off the debt he'd put in my name, but I did it. I had to go to therapy twice a week, just to stop flinching whenever a man raised his voice near me. I had to learn how to trust my own eyes again. I had to realize that I wasn't fragile. I had been under a sustained professional-grade psychological assault. The recovery was slow. There were nights I woke up screaming, thinking he was standing over me with those scissors again. But then I would look at my textbooks and my nursing scrubs, and I would remember that I won. The legal battle lasted nearly a year. Liam tried to play the victim, claiming that I was a scorned woman who had framed him. But his own digital footprint was his undoing. The forensic accountants found the offshore account I had tipped them off about, and they found even more money than I had originally discovered. He had been stealing from his own family too, taking money from his grandmother's trust fund. When that came out, even his own parents turned their backs on him. They called me and apologized, admitting that he had always been a troubled child, and they were sorry they let him put me through that. I didn't accept their apology easily. They had watched me wither away for years and did nothing, but it was a small piece of closure. I spent the next year in a blur of textbooks and hospital shifts. Every time I felt tired, every time I felt like giving up, I remembered the look on Liam's face when he realized he had lost everything. It fueled me. I graduated at the top of my class, receiving the Student of the Year award. On my graduation day, my parents were there, crying and apologizing for not seeing through his acts sooner. They told me they felt like they had failed me, but I told them that Liam was just that good at lying. I didn't blame them. He was a professional manipulator. I realized that the fragility he claimed I had was actually my greatest strength. The empathy that made me a good nurse was the same thing that kept me sane while I plotted my escape. I am a registered nurse now, working in the very pediatric unit I dreamed of. I have my own apartment, my own bank account that only I can access, and I am the only person who holds the keys to my life. Liam is currently serving a 5-year sentence for grand larceny and identity theft. I heard through the grapevine that he's having a hard time in prison. His arrogance didn't translate well to a place where he wasn't the smartest person in the room. I've even started a small support group for women who have gone through financial and educational abuse, helping them find the resources to escape just like I did. We talk about the signs of gaslighting, how to hide money safely, and how to rebuild your credit after someone you love tries to destroy it. Looking back, I realized that the shredded letter wasn't the end of my story. It was just the prologue to a much stronger one. I am no longer that girl on the floor, crying over a piece of paper. I am the woman who rebuilt her own life from the ashes of a bridge I burned myself. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I've learned that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a man like Liam. It's a woman who has nothing left to lose and the intelligence to make her own way back to the top. I have a peace now that I never thought possible. I sleep soundly knowing that my future is in my own hands. I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I look forward. This journey taught me that some people don't want to grow with you. They want to grow on you like a weed until you're completely suffocated. They don't see your potential as something to celebrate. They see it as a threat to their dominance. They will try to make you believe that you are weak, that you are crazy, and that you can't survive without them. But the truth is, they are the ones who can't survive without you. They need your light to feel warm because they are cold inside. They are parasites that feed on your ambition until there is nothing left. Never let anyone tell you that your dreams are a threat to a relationship, because a real partner will always be the wind in your sails, not the anchor dragging you down. If you're in a situation where you feel small, where you feel like you're losing yourself to keep someone else happy, please listen to me. You are stronger than you think, and there is a way out. It might take time, it might take a plan, and it might be the hardest thing you ever do, but you deserve a life that belongs to you. Like this video if you were on my side, and think I did the right thing by turning him in, and taking my power back. Subscribe for more stories like this where we stand up for ourselves and refuse to be victims. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far by humiliating him at the gala? Or did he get exactly what he deserved for trying to steal my future? Every time you share these stories, it helps someone else realize they aren't alone, and that they have the power to change their destiny. I'll be reading every single one of your responses, because your support means the world to me and it reminds me why I fought so hard to be here today. I'll see you all in the next story.